What's up, friends? It's Haley, aka Bird,
and Randi,
and you're tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast.
This podcast is all about challenging what it means to be healthy and fit. It's about celebrating sustainable behavior change and non-scale victories.
And most importantly, it's about giving the bird to the diet industry and societal expectations of body size. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, you have an entire life to live that does not require your body look a certain way.
Thanks for tuning in.
Now, let's give 'em the bird. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of GTB. We've got a solo episode today, so Randi and I, Haley, that's me, we're going to be talking about some of our top diet culture or fitness culture or just even just health and wellnessy culture pet peeves. And this is one of those things I know Randi and I were just talking before we hit record, this was hard to think of, but I feel like whenever I see it, if ever I'm scrolling and I see it, I'm like, oh my God, this is so annoying. In the moment, it annoys me, but it's hard to think of them after the fact, which I guess is maybe good. That means we're not ruminating on our hatred for diet culture, which is
very true.
That's positive. Yeah. So I'll kick us off with my first one because I feel like this is definitely one that you and I can agree on. Non-qualified professionals giving nutrition advice.
Yes.
Girl. Yeah. And I think this one is hard. Again, I always, preface it with some self-compassion and kindness that by no way, shape, or form is this to bash on anyone at all. But I think this one can be difficult because there are so many certifications out there related to nutrition. Even I think I have a certification through Ace Fitness for it's like a fitness nutrition certificate. But they're really clear about what is practicing within my scope and what's not. But I think it can be tricky for folks who have other, certifications that should I be saying this? Should I not? But in general, I feel like there are so many wellness influencers who maybe have no credentials at all, sharing just a lot of times outrageous nutrition information and selling programs and offering consulting. And I'm like, you what? How you're making so much money off of this, and I don't even feel I get scared to talk about supplements with people. It's
right.
Yeah.
And the average person probably doesn't know, maybe even that there are certifications available, let alone which ones they would maybe benefit most from, having a coach or trainer with a certain certification. And I'm sure there's certifications out there that are kind of bogus too, just so not accredited or whatever. So how's a person to know? And then the internet just opens up these doors to anybody to just really give whatever or sell whatever information they want. So
yeah. And I think that was the source of a lot of I think in the past several years there was a lot of controversy around different fitness coaches who were selling 1,200 calorie meal plans. I don't remember the names of them because I wasn't following them when they blew up or whatever. But yeah, there was one fitness coach in particular. I want to say it was Brittany something. I might totally be making that up. But all of a sudden it just erupted that she was basically again selling these 1,200 calorie meal plans, very generic, but telling people that they were going to help with specific things. And I'm just that is just disordered eating in a PDF. Right. That's so scary to me. So yeah, definitely people that aren't properly credentialed or have any sort of credentialing giving nutrition advice. And a tip for listeners, I would say the big thing to look at, again, not that you necessarily have to be a registered dietitian. Again, there can be Precision Nutrition. They have really good certification. So if somebody is a precision nutrition coach or PN1, I think that's typically how they would show it. That's a pretty decent certification, and I trust that. And and I've checked with the dietitian I work with, and she's said like that's a pretty good certification. But the golden nugget of nutrition info, a registered and licensed dietitian. That is, at least in the US. I don't know how that process works in other countries, but in the US, that's really what you should look for. And if you're wanting to practice like specifically intuitive eating or like a non-diet or weight neutral approach, you can look for like a non-diet registered dietitian. Um, and if you are someone who finds yourself selling meal plans or just talking about nutrition, just be careful. You know,
Yeah.
it's not that you don't know what you're doing necessarily. You could be great, you know. Um, but it's also like then just get a certification or go through that credentialing process because it's just going to help you out in the long run. So that is my top pet peeve.
Yep. And I would say even sharing where, like the source of your information is
Mm,
helpful for people. Not that the average person may go look at that, but I think it's helpful. Because I'm the type of person that's like, well, where is that information coming from? I want to see, maybe that's my healthcare background, but
mhm.
I think that's helpful too, and just gives you a little more credibility
Yeah,
too.
I agree.
Um, my biggest pet peeve was something that I ran across recently, and we in a previous episode talked about intuitive eating a little bit. And I came across a headline in a pretty big news source. I can't remember what it was, if it was like the New York Times or ABC News or what, but it was a pretty big news outlet. And the headline was intuitive eating, and I was like, "Yay, intuitive eating in the news!" And then it went on to say may help people lose weight. I was like,
Oh,
oh, yes, it's just like totally going against the purpose of intuitive eating. So taking things like that and just twisting them and putting them right back into diet culture, like that just makes me so mad because for a lot of people, that's how they're gonna be exposed to intuitive eating for the first time is when it comes into, a major news outlet like that, and they maybe have not heard of it before, and then their first exposure is something just totally opposite of what the point is in the first place.
yeah, I completely agree. It's funny. I didn't have this on my list, but I mean, I had like a misconceptions about intuitive eating, but I didn't even think about the promotion of intuitive eating for weight loss. But you are right. That might like top it all.
Yeah.
And I think that like when we look at marketing in general, people who have been selling weight loss and fat loss and all of these things, intuitive eating is now trendy, right? Like it's gaining popularity and with it comes the shape shifting and like the co-opting of it to fit the needs of people who are wanting to use it to make more money, right? And it's like smart marketing on your part, but that's really inaccurate. And I
Right.
remember like the first, so when it comes to like getting certified as an intuitive eating counselor, they are one of the first things you learn is like disconnect the two. Intuitive eating and weight loss like should never be used together. And I think they also might have like we have to sign an agreement that says we will not talk about offering weight loss with intuitive eating. I'm pretty sure I might be exaggerating that, but I remember feeling that way like, okay, no sort of no like weight loss talk. And it makes sense, right? It's like how intuitive eating is to help you reconnect with your body and prevent or work through like disordered eating and everything. And it's like weight loss cannot be in the same sentence as that. Unless
Yep.
it's like ditch the idea of weight loss and practice intuitive eating. Like it
Yep.
ain't gonna work. Yeah. That is a big
Exactly.
one. That is a big one. Some other misconceptions that I was just like common misconceptions about intuitive eating. Not as common as a weight loss one, but that it's just like the hunger fullness diet. Like it's just
Yeah.
about eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. And there's so much more to intuitive eating. I mean, again, when we talked about intuitive eating in a previous episode, we kind of talked about that. Um, or what was another one? Oh, like it's just about eating whatever you want whenever you want. Again, it just like really melts it down to these just one or two or three of the 10 different principles of intuitive eating. And I think the misconceptions about it, like you said, it spreads misinformation and it gives people the wrong idea, especially when people are using the misconceptions as criticism for intuitive eating too. Like I think it can turn people away from it. Um, and again, to combat that, I just say pick up the book. The book is a great
Yeah,
resource. Like there is a lot that goes into intuitive eating, but I think the best place to start is by, reading the book. So that's something that can help you like work through those common misconceptions, I think.
absolutely. I need to get back to reading the book. I started it, but I haven't finished it. So it's
It's
probably a good
funny.
time to just like circle back and refresh and
Mhm. I refer back to it a lot. Like I catch myself because there's just a lot of studies that it lists in there. And just even they don't go into full details about certain things, but at least mentioning certain things. Like I remember I created a post the other day. I haven't shared it, but I created a post about like how intuitive eating addresses this idea of hunger silence, and it was kind of in response to this post on social media that was going around like the holistic health and wellness space about like what intuitive eating gets wrong about hunger and basically saying that like some people don't get hunger signals, and I'm like intuitive eating does address that, like that's a huge portion of it.
yeah,
And so yeah, but it's not again as widely talked about as eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. So I think those misconceptions can really, I don't know, they can contribute to just the false information or misinformation that's out there about intuitive eating, and which can really turn people off, and it can make intuitive
yeah,
eating this really divisive thing or like really dogmatic, and it doesn't need to be that way. So, but yes, the weight loss, you were so right. That's a huge, huge, huge one. Um,
yeah. So bummed.
yeah, another one I have um is just language in particular. I think a lot of times related to fitness. So what's the point of showing up if you're not going to give 100%?
Oh,
Or, oh my God, I think it's that one in particular, or like no excuses. Um,
yes.
like no one cares, just work harder or whatever it might be. Like all of these things that total like, and I think the
Or
reason
if
why,
you're not going to give 100%, you're wasting my time.
yeah.
Ah,
That makes me want to cry. Like I cannot
oh,
imagine being in a class and having a coach say that. I would be like, I better go then because there's
I
I don't have 100% to give most days.
great.
But I think obviously for so many reasons, and for listeners, they'll be able to identify why those things are harmful. But like a lot of times they associate, food and fitness together, like use it to burn off your calories or burn off your calories now so you can eat all the cookies later on, things like that, like puke. I absolutely hate that. Um, the whole idea of like, don't waste my time if you're not going to give 100% or whatever it might be. It's like, but what about all the other reasons that we work out? Like I
Right.
like the other day when you and I were working out together, I was maybe giving 30%, but I was enjoying the hell out of it because I was just like talking
30%.
to you while we were working out. Like
I know, it was so fun. And
like
also, like, it leaves no room for being a human and having a bad day or, having a day when you can only give 30% because of X, Y, and Z. Like, we're not robots that are made
right.
to show up at the gym and work out or, um, you know, eat perfectly all the time. Like, we
Yeah.
have lives.
Yeah, and it almost like exactly what you said, it totally just dismisses the human experience. Like, and I think another reason why it bothers me so much is because I what I go to work, like the reason why I love fitness so much has nothing to do with any of that. Like it has nothing to do with physique or aesthetics or calorie burning. Like it's mental, it helps my mental health so much, right? And I think about just connection in general, like oh my gosh, when if there's ever a trainer who is saying like, don't waste my time here, it's like you are literally ruining the huge community building aspect of fitness and movement. Like, oh, and just feeling good. Like it totally
Yeah.
totally takes away those feel good things. So, yeah, I think just almost like language in general around fitness and food obviously is like really big. But yeah, that's another big diet culture or like fitnessy thing that drives me bonkers, a big pet peeve of mine.
Yep. I also really dislike any claims that something can happen in a short amount of time. Nothing
Yes.
ever happens in a short amount of time. It's usually up and down and sideways and backwards. And then, before you get to whatever your destination is, whether
Mhm.
that's, weight loss for you or muscle building or whatever, but like nothing happens in 2 weeks. Like you don't have 2 week abs or 2 week biceps. Like, sorry.
Yes. That is a good one. And that's like such a good thing to like to think about to discern if this is like diet culture or not. Like, are they making like these really even like drastic claims, I feel like yeah, short amount of time to get these results, or even like eat this one thing and your life will be changed, or like seed oils are ruining your hair growth, like all like like that makes me think of all of those Instagram reels of like people in the grocery store. They like pick out, cereal from the shelf and they're like, this has maltodextrose, blah 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 blah, and that is ruining your hormones. And it's like, well, shit, that's you also have that in carrots. So does that mean I shouldn't eat, like or whatever? I have no idea.
Right.
Yeah. So any like drastic claims, that is a big,
Yes.
big red flag for diet
It
culture.
always reminds me of like going through elementary school when you're learning how to like take tests and they say, when it comes to like a multiple choice or true false or whatever, like you want to avoid the answers. Like the wrong answers are usually the ones that say never or always. And so like when you're looking at claims on things like that, like if it's 100% or always or never, it's probably too good to be true and probably not accurate. You
Ooh, I love that. I never thought about that before.
know?
Maybe they didn't tell me that, and that explains why I didn't do the best in school. Like I was like, always, that sounds like 100% to me. We're gonna go with that.
Absolutely.
That's definitely the right answer. Yeah, that is, and that kind of comes back to that like language piece of it too, of like,
Yes.
how are we trying to sell something? Because any sort of drastic claims, and I think it's so funny when like qualified professionals, I love it when they do like a ask me anything, if they're like a dietitian or whatever it is, or like a really qualified strength and conditioning coach or whatever, and they'll get asked the question of like, maybe I have this pain in this place, what could it be? Or even if I want to lose 10 pounds, what would you suggest? Like all of these things. And I love
Mhm.
the response of it depends. Like I think it
Yeah.
depends is if you hear someone like a professional in health and fitness on social media using the words it depends, um, unless they're I literally have a box of diapers over here, so I literally was like, "Depends diaper." Like that made me think of it. They're not Depends, they're baby diapers. But anywho, like I think any professional that says the words like "it depends" or "I can't give you a 100% answer for that," I'm just like, "Oh, you melt my heart." Like trust that
Right.
person, which
But
feels
people
like
hate that. People
yes.
want, but that is who they should probably
Yeah.
trust and go with.
Yeah, like it feels counterintuitive. Like this person doesn't know for sure. Like I should go with the person that says, I 100% need to be doing this in the gym to get these results. It's like, no,
Right.
it's very counterintuitive, but that's not that's not the person you want to follow.
I remember Danielle when we were talking to her about diabetes and stuff. She gave us that exact like, I know I'm not giving you a concrete answer, but it truly depends. And we're like, yay.
And we're like, we love that. And
Yeah.
that comes back to like this gray area which we always talk about. Like it depends. Like people, I know for some people with intuitive eating, people will ask me like, how long should I expect it to take before I heal my relationship with food? I'm like,
Oh God.
oh, honey, it depends. Or
Yeah.
like, how long will it take me to work through my rules around exercise? Ooh, it really depends. Like, there's just like you said before, we are not robots. There's no cookie cutter that those approaches just they're not going to work. So another thing you can look out for if it comes to should I really take this person's advice or not is if they are using all or nothing kind of language, the always, the
Mhm.
nevers, the you have to do. I always go to like my bro voice, like you gotta do this.
I love your bro voice.
To get your shredded abs, you gotta do this. Like all of those things. Yeah. What other pet peeves are coming up that you can think of? That was a good one.
There are so many, but yeah, when you have to like think about it on the spot, I'm like, oh gosh.
I was thinking of and again there's like nothing inherently wrong with this at all and I think it has a time and a place. But people who are constantly like a healthy swap for this food and that food, I'm just
Oh
kind of like,
yeah.
can I just eat the Oreo? Like,
Right.
can we just have the Oreo? Again, nothing inherently wrong. And I think that that's kind of part of once we get to that like gentle nutrition principle of intuitive eating, the final principle, it's like there might be foods that it's like I don't taste a difference. And if I can have like, a few more nutrients, why the heck not? And it's convenient to eat this healthy swap food. But when I mean, there's literally just pages associated with like eat this, not
Yeah.
that, or like healthy swaps. It's like,
I
ugh.
just had to pull up an Instagram profile that I thought of while you were saying that. And I think you follow her too, No Food Rules.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because she always does like reels on that where she's always all the characters, but she's eating Oreos or something, and her diet culture friend is like, you should try black bean
Yeah.
Oreos. And she's like, maybe I could just like eat the Oreo.
Yeah.
Like, sure,
Yeah.
that might be a good food, but it's not an newsflash, it's not an Oreo.
Yeah, that's not an Oreo. Yeah, yeah, I know. I love her page. She cracks me up and she's so dramatic. The ones where she like will have chocolate all over her face after like signifying a binge and it's just like I don't know. She goes all in for
Yeah.
sure. I love
It's so
that. Oh, yeah. Um actually one thing that's coming up for me is this like obsession with chemicals, like
Oh,
in toxins.
yes.
That's a big
Toxins. Mm.
those damn toxins, I just breathe them in all day, but how do I get them out of my coffee? Or like
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And I follow so Christy Harrison, she is a registered dietitian. She's has like one of the leading anti-diet podcasts, Food Psych. I get her newsletters and I don't always read them, but sometimes just like seeing the headings, I'll either tune into it or not. And one that she recently had was what did she call it? I think it's kind of like health anxiety and that's absolutely a thing, but just
Mhm.
this idea that we can rid all of the toxins from our life and
Yeah.
I am all for like yeah, taking out some of that stuff if and when you can. Like,
Mhm.
I think like, if your beauty products or whatever it might be, but this thought that we can totally remove toxins from our life, that's not going to happen. Like there
Right.
are there's toxins everywhere.
And just because something has a chemical name does not make it a toxin.
Yes.
No, I think that's a huge misconception. And then one of the claims that drives me absolutely bonkers is I don't know what number they use, but let's say it's 5. Like, it takes 5 seconds for toxins to absorb in your skin. As a pharmacist, I can tell you that there are a bajillion factors that affect if and how long it takes something to absorb into your skin. Like, it's
Mhm.
just, I mean, I'm all for people trying to live a healthier lifestyle, whatever that means for them, but it's just the misinformation and, again, the language that draws people in and makes them think, it makes them scared. And so making people scared makes them want to change something or do something. And, you know, it's just not always true.
Yeah, that's like those scare tactics. And I think scare tactics are huge in diet culture too. And again, they're used in like literally every, I'm sure people like with even in intuitive eating, I think we kind of scare people into following intuitive eating sometimes by saying like, you're going to gain more weight if you diet. I think, that could be considered a scare tactic. But yeah, I think those scare tactics are huge in diet culture, and especially when it comes to like the chemical, I don't even there's a word for it, but it's like this like obsession with chemicals. And I think about like the different dyes that are in things and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I really liked what you mentioned about just, oh yeah, like the whole idea of if you can't pronounce it on the ingredient label, you shouldn't eat it.
Right.
But it's like everything has like a, I don't know what it is. I think about like, dogs aren't actually dog, like they have like a proper term, what I
Right.
mean?
Like
Like,
genus and whatever. Yeah.
yeah, like a species, something or other.
Yeah.
And so I think one of those things that's really important to know. And there's a page called Food Science Babe, I think. She's a food scientist. And again, I'm sure some of the things she posts like may not be the most accurate, or they could be controversial, or maybe they're a little bit like demeaning to folks who do want to live like a toxic free life or whatever it might be. But she points out a lot of times on her page that like this name that they used on this label is actually just walnuts, but they don't say walnuts. It's like, like saffrous
Yeah.
diaphragmatic, like,
Right. Or it is truly a chemical name and people are scared of it, but newsflash, it floats around in your body all the time. Like
yes,
there's just things that you just aren't aware of. And it's not that these products or whatever are bad or the
no,
people selling them are bad, but it's just like take a second to think about it before you get triggered by this scare tactic, which is basically just trying to get you to buy something generally.
yeah, yeah. It's almost like, is the fear of this impacting my life? And because I agree, like make those decisions about like, I know Tyler and I try to do things that are a little bit more like sustainable and like again for me it's some of the products that I use like for my perfect hair. I have like a very non chemically, there's obviously tons of, like you absolutely do your thing, right? And it's like, is this a source of anxiety for me that like it is causing distress? And yeah, almost like, is this serving me, or is this causing me stress, or is it de-stressing me?
Right.
um so yeah, that's again a gray area thing, kind of pick and choose what makes sense for you.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And yeah, for some people, like going totally toxin free, whatever that is easy for them and it's not
Yeah.
stressful. For
Mhm.
me, that would I couldn't do it. I couldn't do
Right.
it. I
And
use natural deodorant because I found one I liked and it's easy and I can buy it at Target. But if it's any harder than that, I'm probably not going to do it. So
yeah. Okay, I tried natural deodorant and I couldn't get through that like
the
initial
sticky
period.
base,
I
yeah,
couldn't. I think I probably need to try it again. But I'm a degree gal. But yeah, I have like I think both of my sisters, or maybe not Jessica, but I know Leslie uses like a natural one. There's a lot of people that do. Um, but yeah, I think it's, finding what works for you and making your own decisions about it, but also recognizing that like we can't avoid all of that stuff altogether. Um, and that it's just part of life, you know.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think I'm just thinking back to like what we talked about in a previous episode about your environment and how that affects you. Like just kind of taking stock of when you are triggered by something in diet culture like that you see on your social media or whatever, like considering not following them if you find that it stresses you out or triggers you.
Mm, that's a good tip. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, along with, making sure you're following like registered dietitians, and the people that you're following are like credentialed, or maybe they're not credentialed, but like you feel good as a result of following them. So yeah, I know social media is just like it's funny that when I thought about like diet culture things that bother me, I found myself just going to like the reels, like the explore reels page, just scrolling through and seeing like what irked me a little bit, like what,
Yep.
yeah. And so it turns into it being, these are my diet culture pet peeves, but I have way more just Instagram and social media pet peeves in general. So
Yeah,
that's
same.
a whole nother episode, whole nother episode. Yeah. But we want to hear what your diet culture or maybe like toxic fitness culture, health trend, whatever. What are your pet peeves or what are some things that are like bugging you? And again, a huge, massive exclamation point that absolutely not to bash on people who use any of these things or do any of these things, but just it's more so the marketing around them. I think that is the big ugh,
Yeah, for sure.
the big cringe. So,
Yep.
all right, well, let us know what your biggest diet culture pet peeves are. Again, you can find us on Instagram at Give 'em the Bird Podcast, or you can shoot us an email at give'emthebirdpodcast@gmail.com. We will see you back in another week for another episode, but in the meantime, go give 'em the bird. Thanks for tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, head on over to Apple iTunes or Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Give 'em the Bird Podcast to stay up to date with all things GTB. We'll see you back here next week for another episode, but in the meantime, go give 'em the bird.